Let's talk about something you almost certainly have in your kitchen right now: honey. But have you ever really stopped to think about what's inside that jar? We're about to go way beyond the sweetness to uncover the super rigorous scientific process that decides what actually gets printed on the label.
Just picture it, that jar of honey sitting in your pantry. You know the one. You drizzle it on toast, stir it into your tea. But how often do you really take a good look at the label?
You've definitely seen it there: Canada #1. It sounds pretty official, right? But what does it actually take for a jar of honey to earn that top spot? Well, it's this fascinating journey of both human senses and super precise science, and we're going to break it all down. So the whole operation is overseen by the Canadian Food Inspection Agency. You might know them as the CFIA, and their mission is pretty straightforward: make sure the honey sold in Canada is what it says it is, meeting these really strict rules for grade and color. It's all about quality control for us. So what are they actually looking for? It's a whole checklist. Inspectors are judging things like clarity. Is it bright and clean? They're checking its smell and taste, its texture, its official color, and even getting into the science of it, like its moisture content. Every single one of these factors is crucial for the final grade. Okay, so how does an inspection even kick off? I mean, they can't test every single jar. That'd be impossible. So the very first step is to pull a representative sample from a huge batch, or what they call a production lot. And this isn't just a random grab. No, there's a precise formula. The number of samples they take depends entirely on the size of the batch. So for a smaller lot of, say, 3,600 jars, an inspector might only take 3 samples. But for a massive lot, we're talking nearly 50,000 jars, they'll need to pull 13. It's all about being statistically accurate.
Once those samples are chosen, the real evaluation starts. And the first tools an inspector uses are their own senses: sight, smell, and taste. This is what's called the sensory exam.
The visual test is honestly fascinating. The inspector holds the jar up to a super bright light, something like a 200-watt bulb. Then they rotate it, scanning for any little suspended bits, what the official manual calls particulate matter. For liquid honey to get top marks, it has to be perfectly bright, totally clear. Next up, aroma and flavor. The second that lid is popped open, the inspector is taking a sniff. It should smell sweet and like whatever flowers the bees visited. So clover honey will smell different from buckwheat honey, and that's totally okay. But any off odors, like a burnt or fermented smell, those are immediate red flags. Then, of course, comes the taste test. But not all honey is liquid. For creamed honey, also known as granulated honey, there's another really important sensory test: texture. And the ideal texture is way different from its liquid cousin. For Canada #1, the texture has to be smooth, fine, and totally uniform. I love the official description. It has to melt readily when placed on the tongue and not feel gritty. Any hint of a sandy or coarse feeling would immediately knock it down to a lower grade. But an inspector's senses can only tell you so much. To get the full picture, the honey also has to pass a series of objective, scientific tests back in the lab. First up is color. Now, our eyes can tell if honey is light or dark, but the official classification is done with a special tool called a Pfund honey grader. It gives a precise measurement in millimeters, which then corresponds to official categories like white, golden, or amber. But maybe the most critical scientific test is for moisture content. This one is hugely important for us, the consumers. It determines the honey's shelf life and whether it might ferment. Too much water, and the honey could spoil. So how do they even measure that? The answer is a pretty cool device called a refractometer. They put a drop of honey on it, and the machine measures how much light bends, or refracts, as it passes through. That level of refraction tells them the exact percentage of moisture in the honey. It's quick, it's clean, and it's incredibly accurate. And here's the crucial part: each grade has a really strict moisture limit. For honey to be graded Canada #1, its moisture cannot be more than 17.8%. Even a tiny increase, up to 18.6%, drops it down to a Canada #2. Any higher, and you risk that honey fermenting right there in the jar. So after all the sensory and scientific tests are finally done, the inspector puts all that data together to make the final call and assign the official grade. And the differences between the grades can be pretty stark. A Canada #1 honey has to be perfect: clear, bright, with a smooth texture, and free of any foreign material that would get caught on a superfine screen. A #2, on the other hand, can be a little duller, cloudy, have a grittier feel, and is tested with a slightly less fine screen. But that raises a question. What happens if a batch of honey is labeled as Canada #1, but it doesn't meet those high standards when an inspector checks it out?
Well, there are a few possible outcomes. The company might just have to relabel it with the correct lower grade. In other cases, it could be reprocessed, or if it's imported, even removed from the country. And if the honey is still perfectly safe to eat but just doesn't meet any of the grade requirements, it can be sold with a special label, substandard.
So after going through this whole meticulous process, from the field to the lab, it really puts that simple jar of honey on your table into a whole new light. When you boil it down, it's about at least 8 different factors, from clarity and flavor to color and moisture, all being intensely examined by trained pros using both their senses and scientific gear. It's all to make sure that label really means something. So the next time you see that grade, just remember, it's not some random marketing sticker. It's a certification. It represents a journey of intense scrutiny that guarantees the quality of what's inside that jar. I bet the next time you're in the grocery store, you'll see that jar of honey a little differently. Will you look for the grade? And will you appreciate the complex story it took to get onto that shelf?